Hello, I am Allison, and this is my presentation for the 625 um, Health Promotion Disease Prevention class. And for this class, I chose to focus my interventions on construction workers and preventing chronic diseases. So let's go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about me. I have been a registered nurse for 5 years. I do have a bachelor's degree, and although I am originally from Kansas, I now live in Dorchester. I have been mostly a cardiac nurse for the extent of my training, and I pretty much just to make a long story short, just got sick of taking care of people who had made themselves sick. And so I started studying nutrition more after seeing a documentary called Forks Over Knives that is actually available on Netflix. After doing a short stint travel nursing, I ended up at South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, and I work on the cardiac floor there too because I am a glutton for punishment. And I also decided to start working on a master's in applied nutrition through the University of New England online in order to better educate my patients and further my own career goals of being a nurse practitioner. So, just some expectations and objectives for this presentation. I hope that everybody is willing to be interactive with this presentation. I promise it'll go way smoother if you are. That you're honest and that you're respectful of other people in the class as well as myself. So some objectives that we're going to go over are to discuss the importance of healthy diets, identify barriers to healthy food options, develop ideas to overcoming those barriers that we identify. We're also going to look at food nutrition labeling and talk about how to do that. It's really complicated, but I think we can figure it all out together. As well as we're going to identify some nutrient deficits that are very common in younger adults. So just a little bit about you. Like I said, this is an interactive presentation, so I hope you all are engaging. So I just want to know, like, how old are you? How many of you are 18? Raise your hand. 19, raise your hand. 20, raise your hand. Okay. And I am imagining a lot of you are from here around the area, but just kind of like, where did you grow up? And then how did you decide to get into an apprentice program? I know right now the economy is really good and kicking, but so the jobs are available. And just a little tidbit about me, my boyfriend is in the construction industry, and that's kind of why I decided to look at this, look at construction workers as a population to see how I could help you guys out. So just getting a little bit of information like this from you guys right now is going to help us kind of figure a little bit more about all of us. So just asking you guys, what do you consider to be a diet-related health concern? Um, or do you even consider diet to be related to health? I kind of want to hear what you guys think about this. Pause for effect. Okay. Variable answers. Okay. So just a little bit about diet and illness. Diabetes, obesity, and heart disease are chronic conditions. According to the CDC, as of 2012, half of all adults had one, and 1 in 4 had 2 or more. And this is as of 2012, so this is 5 years ago. Just a little insight, as a registered nurse working on a cardiac floor, many times I take care of people of my 4-patient assignment in a day, I'll say, at least 3 of them have 2 of these conditions. Some of them have only one, but are at very high risk of developing a second because of their risks of already having the one. So it's really sad for me to be taking care of these people when I know that all they could be doing was eating better food and could helpfully prevent something like this. Um, so these conditions are directly related to the lifestyles that you and I live, including participating in physical activity or not participating in physical activity, eating really bad food, smoking, and the ultimate alcohol consumption. Now, the CDC does have recommendations on all of these, that they all do, that consuming alcohol, smoking, having a poor diet, and not getting enough exercise do contribute to obesity, heart disease, as well as diabetes. So, chronic diseases and nutrition. Um, so obviously I've chosen, because I'm a student of nutrition, I've chosen to focus on the dietary aspect of it. So diet and body weight are important indicators for overall health. So when we look at somebody, kind of the first thing that I see about them is what is your height to weight ratio? And we use a BMI calculator to assess for probability of preventing or developing chronic conditions, because a healthy weight is shown to prevent chronic diseases. So I do have a link here if anybody wants to kind of come over here and click it open. We can do that. So clicking it open. So just as an example, I am, and you guys won't believe this, but I'm actually 4 foot 11 inches, and I weigh 128 pounds as of this morning. So this actually says that my BMI is 25.9. So like I said, this says here that my BMI is 25.9. It says I'm overweight. But let's go ahead and go back to our slides here. It's big. So it says I'm overweight. However, BMI is a height to weight ratio. It does help us kind of figure out chances of developing a chronic disease. But people who are either underweight, overweight, or obese obviously have a greater risk of developing chronic diseases. And leading causes of preventable death are obesity related. I got to that. And people who have a high BMI are more likely to develop chronic conditions, including anxiety, depression, and decreased physical ability. So even though I have technically an overweight BMI and a healthy weight for a person of my height is anywhere between 95 and 123 pounds, I actually participate in quite a bit of physical activity. Recently started doing CrossFit. So a lot of my weight could be contributed to muscle. So just because we use BMI a lot because it's cheap, it's a very cheap test to do, it doesn't take into account any muscle mass or lean muscle mass. So just keep that in mind. Just because you might be smaller and you have a higher weight, doesn't mean that your BMI is high, doesn't mean that you're necessarily at risk, because you could have a lot of lean body mass. And the prevalence of obesity is also higher among non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, and Hispanic adults and youth than among non-Hispanic Asian adults and youth. So we kind of have to look at a little bit of cultural issues going on here. What do non-Hispanic whites, blacks, and Hispanic adults consume that Asian adults and youth don't. So that's something else we'll get into later. Down here, people who are obese are more likely to develop anxiety, depression, and have decreased physical ability. Your body is your number one tool that you use in the construction industry, and if you break that, you're kind of out of luck. You're bending, jerking, using your muscles to lift heavy equipment, and if you don't have the capability to do all of that due to obesity, unfortunately, you won't be able to sustain your job in the construction industry. So, like I kind of mentioned earlier, here's a BMI visual graph, and this is all of somebody of the same height. So you can kind of see the differences. The BMI is there at the bottom, normal weight, slightly overweight, and then overweight and extremely overweight. But like I said, this doesn't take into account people of different heights. So women who weigh the same could be different heights, and one could look healthy and the other could look very malnourished, but they all have the same BMI. And it's the same with men. So why should you care what you eat? I feel like I've been eating or beating this horse ad nauseum, but quickly, construction industry workers, I found a study, are more likely to consume more sodium, calories, and cholesterol than, say, service workers or white-collar workers. By service workers, we're talking people who work in restaurants, and white-collar workers are, the big man upstairs who sits at a desk and makes all the money, collects all the money that you're making for him. So, consuming more sodium leads to high blood pressure because water follows salt. So if you're eating something that's highly salty and you are drinking quite a bit of fluid, your body is going to be more likely to hang on to that fluid. And the majority of your blood is water as well. It's just cells floating around in water. So the more volume you have within your vasculature, it's going to increase the pressure. Consuming more calories than you needed leads to weight gain, like we talked about before. And then high cholesterol levels can lead to cardiovascular disease. Now, we know your body does require cholesterol to synthesize new cells, to make hormones. So it's important to get some cholesterol in your diet, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that the source of the cholesterol is more important than how much of it you consume. So here's just a visual of a normal coronary artery because, I am a heart nurse. So normal coronary artery, this is actually the most, this is called the circumflex artery, this left main and then the right coronary. So what happens when you consume too much cholesterol from poor sources, your good cholesterol actually wanders around in your vasculature and looks for all the bad stuff. But if you don't have enough good cholesterol from eating a healthy diet and exercise, it's not going to be able to keep up with the bad cholesterol that builds up in your arteries. And that can lead to atherosclerosis. And in some cases, you can have situations where you have a blood clot break off, and that can lead to the narrowing of the artery, plus a blood clot can form, if this happens in your heart, it causes a heart attack. And it can also happen in other parts of your body, including your brain, and in the small vessels in your hands, legs, feet, causing other awful issues. So if you smoke, your chances of developing a blood clot go even higher. And these are the most preventable hazards that you'll see on a job site. So eating very little sodium, minimizing your calories, and eating foods low in cholesterol.